Mr. Charles Lynn Frost is an award-winning actor, playwright, and social justice activist. He was named Outstanding Performing Artist by Salt Lake City Mayor Ralph Becker, has been awarded Outstanding Arts Educator by the Governor of Utah, and named Best Actor by the Salt Lake Tribune, City Weekly, Slug Magazine, and Q Salt Lake. Frost's creation, Sister Dottie, S. Dixon, has been awarded Best Utahn by City Weekly. Person of the Year by Q Salt Lake, and was Grand Marshal in the Utah Pride Festival and Outstanding Humanitarian by RCGSE. Frost has been seen in Facing East, The Laramie Project, Angels in America, God's Country, and in many other plays. He is a Screen Actors Guild and Actors Equity Association union actor. He writes a monthly column for Q Salt Lake called The Queer Shift, and appears on X96's Radio from Hell as Sister Dottie, 3 times monthly. He resides in downtown Salt Lake City with his husband Douglas Locke and their Norwich Terrier Cashman. I and we are so excited to have him here today. Charles will be speaking for us, roughly 20-25-ish minutes. We're not always great at that, but of talking, and then about 10 minutes of Q&A. Please welcome with me, Charles Lynn Frost.
My recovering Mormonitis gets really scared with the podium. Can I do this? That's better. Now I feel like I'm in theater talk. Okay. What a pleasure it is for me to be here with you this morning and to meet some wonderful new people and also see some people that I know. Thank you for coming. I've got a bunch of friends here, one all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. She could be doing a spa and a mani-pedi at the Marriott right now. She's chosen to come here with this sordid story. It's been very nice getting to know you too in setting this up, and I appreciate your arrangements that you've made. This group I had not heard about until Mr. Pratt got me all involved. And then I learned a lot about it, and I've talked a lot about it, and the event was posted, and people kept saying to me, so what is this Oasis thing? Is it at the restaurant? And in fact, people were saying, so what part of the restaurant are they going to do that thing on Sunday? And I go, in the parking lot. It's not the restaurant. But I've looked forward to doing this and have had some time to think about it. I've spoken to numerous audiences throughout Utah, different community groups, religious groups, large audiences, small audiences. Sister Dottie has been an active, well, she calls herself the accidental activist. And what I mean by accidental activist is when I created her, I did not believe she was solely just for activism. And then as the character, which I'll tell you in a moment, grew, social activism became her main and biggest purpose to survive. I also feel as though it's important to share with you this morning that I'm honored to be here, and I love to share the story. As we go into the story of how Sister Dottie evolved and how I created her, can't see this side of the audience, and I have to see their faces or I'll be scared. Okay. There they are now. we have to kind of go back to my story, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes on my story. If I spend more than 10 minutes on this part, you're to raise your finger and say done, or done, and then I'll move on, because it's complicated. Charles is intertwined with Sister Dottie in so many, many ways. And as I tell you the story, you'll even find out genetically that Charles is intertwined with Sister Dottie through DNA. So maybe sharing my story. I grew up in a small, little rural town. It was smallish. It could be called a city, I guess, if you really used your imagination, called Spanish Park, Utah. And if you, oh, you're there? I still live there? Oh, good. They got you out, huh? You use Radio Free Salt Lake? As a young boy growing up in that community, I was the youngest of 5 children. My mother had me at 40. I used to tease her as a little boy that no one has babies at 40. And what was she thinking? And that I was a mistake, right, Mom? And she would never quite admit that. And this went on for years. And I remember one day when I was about 12, my dad grabbed me and took me out back, and not to the woodshed. Should have, but to the patio, and grabbed me right here and put me down in a chair, and he said, "Okay, you were a mistake. Leave that woman the hell alone." So I always knew I was a long ways down the child line. So I kind of grew up as an only child, and I grew up as a weird difference from my 2 older brothers who were into guns and hunting and trucks. Nothing wrong with that. I love myself a good man in a truck and with a beard and I don't need the gun so much, but it's always nice to have in case somebody's got a gay bash. But my brothers learned everything from my father, and when I was young, I also had a really close disease, very close to leukemia. So my mother was one of those overprotective Freudian Mormon mothers, and she almost lost me a couple times in the first year. So I grew up in this town where if you didn't love scouting, I mean love these things. If you didn't love scouting, if you didn't love baseball, Little League, if you didn't love rodeo, you were probably in line to get your ass kicked about 2.5 times a month. That was a hard thing. I mean, I enjoyed those things, I participated, but they were never really what I got into. And then a cousin of mine once was in a musical called Carousel. I don't know if you've seen it. Sometimes it comes on old movies, and I realize how schmaltzy it is, but I still get all choked up and cry when she sings "You'll Never Walk Alone." It's like, oh, you know. So I saw that and I thought, I want to do that. I want to act. And so then I started pursuing acting and did a lot of acting. I was in love with a man from 19 to 20. A returned LDS missionary who was like 25. Dumb as dirt, me, but realized there was a plan or a madness to his method. And the minute I turned 19 and was no longer jailbait, I realized what the madness to his method was. I don't regret that, but was with him for a year. And then a weird thing happened at BYU. Here I was at BYU. We were roommates, and we got in a play together, and this other person got in a play. So there were 3 of us in this play. This other person was my ex-wife. And so we had this weird BYU love triangle. Would even boggle them today. I was in love with him. She was in love with me, and he thought she was the one he should marry. So we have this weird love triangle, and finally we stopped being friends. And so at that point, I went back to my bishop and I said, weirdness, I don't know what to do. I'm gay, and I have, I'm card carrying, Bishop. gone through the mileage, and so I know what that means. He said, get married right away, it'll start to go away, and if you have children, the faster you have them, the faster it will go away. And I said, okay, I'll take that as my one last piece of advice for Mormonism. So I did that. I did it for 19 years and 11 months and had 4 children. And then in 1994, which I call my annus horribilis, or horrible worst year, several things happened to me that year in 1994. I left Mormonism for good. I'd left it 10 years earlier in my heart. I left it while I was still in the marriage. And I was excommunicated. They do their excommunication thing, which is always real fun. It's like, this must be what the Spanish Inquisition was a lot. I quit teaching and went into the corporate world. And I came out fully to everybody, and I decided to be authentic, and something that I had never done. And my mother died, all in the space of about 7 months. And I knew there was such thing as anxiety and panic attacks and those sorts of things, but you know, I'm so strong, I try to push through everything. Here I am, I'm Charles, I'll make it, you know, throw me anything in life, I'll fix it up and make it work for me. So most of this happened in the spring of that year, and every spring thereafter, I would have panic attacks so bad that I'd have to pull over on the freeway and just breathe for about 25 minutes. And then after 4 years, I went through a spring, and I realized you didn't have any panic attacks. You smelled the lilacs, you saw the cherry blossoms, all the things you love about spring. And was I completely over all that? Probably not psychologically, but I was over it physically, and I could move forward. And the one thing I promised myself at that point is I would never, ever lie again. I would never, ever not embrace authenticity to its fullest. That became my #1 value. And it is to this day. Many people say the mother of all values is humility, and I believe that. And I always think that then, what's the father of all values? And to me, that's integrity. If you don't have both of those in a good syncopatic combination, you're not going to have balance in your life, and you're not going to have happiness and joy in your life. But authenticity has always been at the top, and it's because I lived all those years, almost 40 years, where I wasn't able to tell the truth, or I didn't tell the truth when I could have earlier. You just didn't tell anybody your feelings when you were young growing up in that town. So that's kind of Charles. Fast forward, you know, I've gone through all the other things. As mentioned before by Aaron, I decided that if I was going to act again when I moved to Salt Lake City from Provo, I made it to Provo. I decided to stay there for a little while. That was also scary. But I moved to Salt Lake City, and people were asking me to audition, and I thought, yeah, I could do that play, or I could do that play. I'd already acted a lot in my life. I had directed a ton. And I kept thinking, it's going to have to be something to pull me out to make me want to act. So I decided, well, what is that? And then I decided, well, it's social justice issues. And if you are going to take the time, which is a lot of time, to be in a production, it's going to, first of all, it's going to have to be quality. It's going to have to be worth my time. And it's going to have some sort of message or several themes within the context of the play to keep me engaged long enough to go through all that you go through to portray and create a character from square one to performance level. And I did a lot of those sorts of plays. I did God's Country by Stephen Dietz, as Aaron mentioned, a play about white supremacy, a true story. I did Angels in America which I think is perhaps the greatest American play ever written. I feel as though that play exposed levels of so many different sorts of things: commitment, betrayal, religious differences, and accepting or rejecting those. Also, it dealt with tremendous homophobia and self-loathing, internalized homophobia, and it dealt with the AIDS crisis. And that was a powerful show. I also did Facing East. As an actor, as a father, my oldest had a granddaughter, our oldest granddaughter, wonderful, easy baby, charming. We were very involved in her life. And then my daughter-in-law got pregnant again, and we lost that baby at full-term delivery at 7.5 pounds. So it was tragic. So they had gone off to get away for a while, and I was tending and taking care of their house because I had some free time, and I took it. And during that time, Plan B Theater Company called and said, would you read this script for Facing East? I don't know if any of you saw that show, but I had just had a friend who told me the most horrific story. So this is a seedling, or this is maybe the ground preparation for Sister Dottie. All of this is, but as far as social activism, but this one play and this one opportunity was huge. He said, would you read the script of Facing East? And I said, yeah, email it to me and I'll read it, because I do have some free time here. I'm with a 2-year-old and they take naps, and I'll give up a couple of my precious naps to read your precious play. So it was by Carolyn Pearson, and it centered around suicide and gay suicide. And I read it, and she had made the father not the villain, which is typically not the case if you have a Mormon play about gay parents. It's usually the dad that is the jackass, and the mother who is the loving, caring one that tries to keep the family together. This one was just the opposite. The father had the big emotional turn in the play, I guess, and the mother, she kind of stayed constant and true and Mormon and unable to accept what their son had found a lover, and they'd lived together. And there's a scene where the lover comes to the graveside. The whole play takes place post-funeral at the graveside. So there's an open grave there, that's all there is, with some flowers. And they have a conversation with him. And then we go off into a memory moment with him where he has a scene with the pretend son, or his lover, which is beautiful. And really, really hard. With comedy, you can put it in your locker every night as an actor and shut it up and say bye, see you tomorrow. You know, you'll be there, it'll be the same thing. Comedy is a science, drama is not. Drama is an art. It's really hard. And you cannot leave the emotions in your locker with drama as you can comedy. You have to take and carry that with you throughout your day-to-day life, because you have to access that drama every night. And if you put it away, it's almost like opening a closet and everything falls out and you're trying to find where it is and access it, because you've got to access it for that performance or those performances that day. So it was a hard show emotionally. When I said yes to doing the play, a friend of mine had just said to me, there's real tragedy. His sister-in-law, her brother, who had gone on a Mormon mission, and reluctantly, because they all thought maybe he was gay. But he went anyway, and his father said, if you go, when you come home, I will buy you any car up to this limit that you want. So he went on his mission, successfully came home, father bought him a car, and life is going along, and at about 3 months from home, he came out. And as I mentioned before, the father was the mess, and took away the car and said, the rest of it's yours to pay off, and said, get out. you don't live here anymore. So kicked him out, and our guests really belittled him through some terrible words. And the next day they found him in the car, and it sliced his wrist open, and it bled to death in the car. So here I am reading this play about a kid who had done this in the play, and this thing's happening in real life, and I'm thinking, this isn't coincidental. The universe is telling you something. Wake up. Usually I have to be smacked pretty hard by the universe. I believe in it, but sometimes I catch them, but most of the time not until after it's obvious. So I called it next, I'll do the play. So the play had 3 runs in Salt Lake, sold out. We ran in New York off Broadway for a month and a half. We ran in San Francisco for a month and a half. And that was a real fulfilling play. And like I said, the seeds to Sister Dottie and what she was becoming started there at the fact that I thought, I need to be doing something more for youth suicide, in particular gay LDS youth suicide, or the young men and women who are killing themselves over this fact that they cannot reconcile being gay or lesbian and also being Mormon. So, how was it out of time? Am I okay? Okay, because I'm done with that part. Yay! I'll tell you a few more things about me, but that's basically me in the quickest nutshell I can dish it up. I then had the opportunity, a former friend of mine who worked at KRCL said to me, he was doing a show every week called Now Queer This. It's a half-hour show. It was all about current events, news, things that were changing, legislation that was happening, big shifts in the gay world. And it was half an hour, and although it was very informative, it was not terribly entertaining. And people were saying it's good, but it's dark and it's heavy. And I listened to your show, and I wanted to, just jump off a cliff, because it's a lot of really sad, bad news. He goes, I need something funny, and like I said, we were friends at that time, and he knew I was an actor and did a lot of comedy, and I had directed him in numerous productions previously, so we knew each other really, really well. I said, will you create a character to be on the radio every week for 10 minutes, and you'd have to write it, and blah, 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 blah. And then he said, you'd have to write it, you'd have to edit, and I said, well, I don't want to edit it too. You're going to have to, and one of my first editors is in the audience today, and thank God, because he made me a lot funnier than I was originally. I even did the unprofessional thing and came to a recording session once, a tad intoxicated. And so Sister Dottie was a little drunk that week, although I don't think they knew that. And it was kind of out of fear. I'd done voiceover work as a SAG actor. I'd done radio work. I'd done work. But I'd never had to just go there and write it and deliver it. And so I told him no. I said, that's just too much work. No, can't do it. He came back 4 different times. And on the 4th time, I said, okay, let me think about it. Go away, don't call me, don't text me. Your texts bug the shit out of me. Because he texted all the time. And the texts were always full of innuendo of, are you going to do it? And I was like, so I said, I'll text you when I'm ready to talk. So I went to work thinking, what do I want to create here? I have an opportunity to create a character just like a playwright. I've done that before. So what do I want to create? And this whole thing about the suicide and the youth suicide was just right there, and it was saying, you have to talk about that. And this character has to be about that. She will also be about other things as you create her. So I sat down on a piece of paper and I said, well, if you're going to create a character, I want the opposite of me. I want to be able to do a vocal character that is opposite of Charles. I don't want to create something close to Charles. To me, that's not a challenge, and it's way too safe. So I wrote down I grabbed this piece of paper, put the line down the middle, and I put male. I wanted her to be female. Non-Mormon, she's going to be a devout Mormon. Father, mother, educated, she's going to be worldly wise, but hempen and homespun. Super liberal, she's going to be moderate to conservative, but she'll vote Democrat. Gay, straight, as I said with my education, I use proper English and grammar. She uses tons of malapropisms, and she has horrible grammar, and she has perhaps one of the worst Utah regional dialects that have ever been, has ever been created for someone to speak. And people love her if they know her, if they read her Facebook posts and don't know anything about her. There's been many a comment like, who the hell is this crazy woman? And why does everybody listen to her? And why does she have so many friends? I'm new here, and I think she's a fool. Then this barrage of comments comes down defending Sister Dottie, and the poor person who wrote the initial comment usually has had to leave the state and move somewhere else. They've been berated so terribly. The last one was urban, and this one is going to be rural-ish from a small community. So I sat down and looked at it, started thinking about it, and this really did not even dawn on me until I went. I was thinking about things about how would she speak, and what would I write about, and how would I have to write it differently than I would say it. It's like a whole new language. Da, 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 and all of a sudden, oh my God, you created your mother. And it was to the T, it was my mother. And I thought, oh, Freud is jumping up and down in his existential role. But I created my mother, and I thought, well, it is my mom. And I thought, well, why didn't you know you were subconsciously doing that and thinking that? So then I had this person to embrace and put Sister Dottie all around. And my mom was hilarious. She was one of the funniest people I ever knew, and she kept her sense of humor until she died at 83. And she would say some of the damnedest things you would ever hear come out of a human being's mouth. And she was true Spanish for Park Royal, and that's how Sister Dottie evolved. So she was on the radio, I was writing, the producer was editing, some other talented people were editing, we found music, we found bits, and then nobody else could write her, so my friend who asked, that was the producer, said, do you mind if I start writing her? I said, well, you can start writing her, but I have to approve everything you write. Because I don't trust that you get it. You're from Oregon. And even though you lived here well, you don't get what I get at the depth of her. And as she is a character near and dear to me because she is my mom. And he wrote a few that got funnier, he wrote a few more that got funnier. We started taking her on journeys and little travels that were really fun on the radio show. And then the Utah Pride Center asked if Sister Dottie could speak at their coming out day breakfast, their big coming out day breakfast. Well, then a really big decision had to be made because up to that point I had been a vocal character and no one knew who I was, really truly, except for just a handful of people. She sounded familiar to people. If I met her, on the radio, there's something. I've never met her though, so I just dismiss it really quickly. So we had to do a physical manifestation of Sister Dottie, and I called one of my dearest friends, Judy, and I said, I'm coming over to get your closet open, because I said, I'm going to raid it. And she said, well, I'll do your wig. And I said, okay. She goes, I'll do your nails, and I'll do your jewelry. And she goes, your chest is kind of barrel-shaped. And I said, yeah. Well, I think she's probably about a 43D. And Judy said, oh, no, honey, she's 44D pushing And so we made a bra and stuffed it full of padding, and we took a couple of pictures and did the full makeup. And I pity women who have to put on all that and pantyhose to boot, and it's a pain in the ass. I could never do drag because after about 2 nights of performance, I'd kill people in the audience and then go out in a blaze of glory myself, because drag's hard. It really is. I didn't see her as a drag queen. I saw her as a drag character, like unto Mrs. Doubtfire or Tootsie. She had to be believable, and I had to pull her off. And people had to believe she really was a Mormon mother from Spanish Park with a gay son, Johnny Dixon, who when we started was in his 20s, and now he's in his 30s, and he's moved back home living in her basement presently. Johnny Dixon was easy for me to always create crisis around, or stories around, or knowing exactly what Donnie would do or say to his mother, because it was me. Like, I don't really think about Donnie. Donnie's a hellraiser, he's a rebel, you know, he drinks Bud Light, he drives a black Tacoma, you know, all this stuff that's come out over all the years. So all these characters that she's married to, Don D. Dixon, and he's kind of a real Marlboro man, a man's man, and you know, he rides horses or horses. And so all these characters around her had to start being fleshed out. I did a big genealogy chart of her grandparents. She was an O'Donovan, and they originally came through Ireland to the United. I mean, here I am doing Ancestry.com through Mormonism mine for a character that really never lives, only when I go out and perform. So I was too scared to appear live. So I said, what if we do a video? And it's via feed satellite, and she's coming in on the big screens at your coming out day breakfast, and she is in Laburican at the KOA camp. She is there to accept the Mother of the Year award from the Laburican P-flat. As if Laburican even has a P, let alone a P-flat. So nonsense stuff like that. And so she came on, and it was really fuzzy, and again, my friend Frank back here helped with that video, and he edited it in such a way that it looked like the feed was really bad, and we weren't really getting a good feed, and she was like sketchy sometimes. And then she came in full blast, and then she did half of the episode that we did live, and then her husband Don was deaking around the motorhome and pulled the plug accidentally, so she went black. And so they're like, oh, what do we do now? So something else went on, and then right in the middle of the next speaker, here she comes blasting back in, and she finishes her story, oblivious that she's interrupting another speaker, oblivious that the people in the room, the 400, 500 people in the room, are wondering, this is insane. But they're laughing, and they're laughing really hard, and I'm going, okay. That's all I needed to know, is they would laugh at her visually as well as they had verbally. And so then I'm ready to do her. I'm ready to do her. I can go out and do this character on the street tomorrow. But that night at the big celebration of all the people who had participated and put together the National Coming Out Day breakfast, the conversation was, who was that Dottie Dixon? Is she really from Spanish Fork? She is so odd, but you know what? She reminds me of half of Utah. You know, who is that Dottie Dixon? She sounded familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. And we're all just sitting there cracking up and dying and laughing. They even asked my husband, and he goes, I know, she seems really familiar to me too. And it was weird. And then it was keeping Dottie in the closet, because I didn't want her out of the closet. I wanted that mystery of them not knowing who this was doing Dottie. And then eventually she was selected as Grand Marshal for the Pride Parade, and that was just going to be way too much exposure. And so Dottie came out. She had a cover story on Q Salt Lake, and it was in the Tribune, coming out of Sister Dottie, and then I was revealed. To this day, 3-4 times a week on Facebook, I'll get a private message. She has 2 Facebook pages. She has Sister Dottie S. Dixon, which is her fan page, and that can have unlimited friends. And then she has Dottie Dixon, which is always at 5,000. And I have to sometimes purge. So I'll go in there one day and go, okay, here goes all the Beckys. I'll think of the Mormon name, or here goes all the Emilys. They're gone. You know, and then that opens up like 50, and then I hurry and add all the ones that are in the stable, and then I'm back at 5,000. I'm like, phew. I'm sure the Beckys and the Emilys are going, what the hell happened? They say something that I'm not like. Some. Eventually they return and come back in. Some of them write this sad message like, why did you drop me? I'm crestfallen and I'm hurt. And I'm never going to recover. And I said, honey, I'll have you back in a minute. In the meantime, go over to the fan page and get on there, because you'll get a lot of the same ha-ha-ho-ho there. So she survived for a few years, and then we wrote a play called The Passion of Sister Dottie S. Dixon that ran for 3 different runs to sold-out audiences, and it won all sorts of awards. It won Best Play, Best Production, Best Director, and Best Actor. There were some theatrical companies in Salt Lake that were not happy that year because we swept it. And I have some stories there, but I won't dish that dirty. But then we did another play called Dottie, the Sister Lives On at Salt Lake Action Company, and it also sold out and was greatly successful. Those plays had themes, social justice themes, gay marriage, surrogate parenting if you were a gay or a lesbian couple. It talked about excommunication and the pain of that in the LDS Church. It talked about acceptance and love. It went from, it followed this pillar that at the peak was celebrating the differences. And below that is accepting the differences. And the third rung down is tolerating the differences. And I hate that word. If you tolerate me, I'd rather have you hate me, which is at the bottom. Because then I know you hate me, and I can hate you right back. Or I can choose to love you because you hate me and be a bigger person for a few minutes. Yeah. So that's kind of the story. Thank you. I feel like I'm back in high school debate. You always seem to grab this. Oh, yeah? We have done a lot with Sister Dottie. Every second, third, fourth, and oh dear God, if there is a 5th Tuesday, and in some months there is, by that time I'm pretty worn out. She's on at 8 o'clock on X96 radio from Helen, Carrie, Bill, and Gina as a regular guest. And I've had a lot of fun doing her there. Their radio station, those 3 are a blast. Bill Allred's son Dylan is here with us today, and they make it really, really fun. We have a great time. And they get a chance to kind of just sit back and go, we don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know what crazy-ass thing she's going to come in here today to talk to us about. We're just going to sit here, and then so for them it's very improvisational, and they get to throw in wise guidelines, and they get to throw in other questions that help support me and the 10 to 15 minutes we're on the show. And she talks about myriad different things, about social issues, news, politics, baking. Every holiday gets hit. This next Tuesday we'll be back to school, and she's going to have some real crazy tips for people that are taking their children back to school. Maybe survival tips for the parents more than the kids. She's always talked about this from the beginning. Never choose your church over your child. That's why I created her at the very beginning, and that still is the driving love theme of Sister Dottie. And she'll fall on her sword over anybody who's not loving, and she'll call them out. She loves the Utah legislature. She loves to call them out. That's been fun. Todd Weiler was on one day just before Dottie, and we rode up on the elevator together. Todd Weiler from Bountiful. Mr. Horn is the biggest health crisis sponsor of that bill. He could discover so many things with the money he's going to spend on that. But he rode up on the elevator with me, and I thought, oh, what pomposity do we have here? And so he got on and rambled and raved, and these were all things Dottie was not for. So then she got on afterwards, and she went off on a tirade about Todd Weiler. And then her segment was done and she left. But then Todd Weiler's wife called in to the station saying, is Sister Dottie still there? And luckily I was still there. And they go, Sister Dottie, come back in. Todd Weiler's wife was on the phone. Her name was Melissa Gordon. She was from Spanish Farm. And so she goes, I don't think you know my husband really well. She said some really terrible things about him. I said, well, he said some really terrible things. And I had to defend him. And I go, you have got to train him better, sister. And then I found out she was a Gordon Spanish Farm. We went on and on about the Gordons, because I lived next to the Gordons. And she was related and blah, blah, blah. And it was a hilarious sort of thing. And Todd Weiler ever since has said, I'll come back on your show as a politician, but I will not be near Dottie Dixon. So I scared her. And I have his wife's phone number. I think I'm going to call her and say, hey, tell Todd to man up and come on the show with Sister Dottie. We have done a lot of fundraising with Sister Dottie for various organizations, religious groups. We love the Unitarians. Charles loves the Unitarians. They're good people. We've raised money for the First Baptist Church, for women's issues, women's housing, the homeless, pets, Salt Lake Men's Choir, Local Zoo. I can't even remember them all now, but I was asked by a reporter about a year ago, what do you think the total is you've raised? And I kind of sat down and remembered every one. Should have brought the list, but then I don't want to talk to you about that. But the total amount was like $225,000 we've raised. And we also have a book and a CD that we made with the first show. And I don't know if you know about the book, where in the first play, The Passion of Sister Dottie said, on her honeymoon night, her wicked sister Wendy gives her husband Don the Kama Sutra, the Mormon Kama Sutra. And so we did a revision of the Kama Sutra. And since I like to go to new groups and maybe leave a little memento behind, I don't know how we do this. I can't fill them and look at people head gashes. I brought Four of Sisters CD, Dottie Dixon, This I Know. We also have the Mormon Kama Sutra, illustrated by Pat Bagley and his genius. We rolled that together, and here's a sister in her boudoir, giving all sorts of information. So I've got 5 of these, and I'd be happy to sign them for Sister. She has given me permission to do that. And you figure out how to do this.
We have our end of year party.
Absolutely. And I'll just sign them before I leave, and then you'll have them. How's that? Perfect. That was perfect. Thank you. Great idea. I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even know how many people are going to be there. I can't bring 300 of these.
Well, we never know how many people are going to be here either.
So we're about question time?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What questions have you? I've given you a lot of stories and information about the evolution of the character, but she started around young, LDS suicide, and never choosing your church over your child. And always standing on the side of love, which she ripped off from Unitarians. My dear friend Sandy has been on the whole journey with Sister Dottie. She's done some of the fundraisers and helped me. She has Sister Dottie parties afterwards where I get to go with Charles. It's really nice. She does cakes and flowers, and everybody has tiaras, and it's hilarious. And a dear friend and her husband, they're both very generous and have been. I've mentioned everybody I know in the audience. Let's ask some questions. Ask anything. Oh, now I have to look over this way. Hi. What's your name again?
My name is Pat. So my question is, first, it's nice to put a sort of base the recipes on that kind of stuff. So your rebellious gives some face on your mother. How was that your coming out experience with your parents? Accepting or not with it?
I never came out to my father because I was 17 and he died. And it was at that age where it was the 70s and coming out was really dangerous. And coming out to parents, you were more worried about what they were going to do than how you were going to survive. So I'm from the boomer generation. I'm dead middle boomer. And it was just not something that one entertained. I had friends that we never came out to one another, but we all knew that the other was probably gay. My gaydar is perfect. I can spot him from a mile away at a 10. In fact, I've even had mothers bring children to me saying, "What do you think of it?" I don't know, but I do think he acts like a little gay boy. And don't you repress that. You celebrate that in every way. So, my mother knew. She didn't know quite how to process it, because I was that child born when she was 40. So by now she's, well into her 60s. And it was like, it's harder for me to educate her and take her through this than just let her live with the knowledge of it, and she did. And then we never talked about it again. My siblings, I had wonderful siblings. My oldest brother and my oldest sister were like parents, because one was 20 when I was born and the other one was 18. So I had a second mom and dad. And my oldest sister was like the best mom in the world. Not that mine wasn't, she was great. But my oldest brother was like my dad versus my father. He was tired and done having kids, is what he was. And then they got this hellion, and like, great. Should have used double-strength condom then. So, yeah, that's what happened in my real life with my own coming out. But I've coached a lot of people in coming out. And I've coached a lot of people in changing religion. I have a coaching certificate with 4 specializations, executive managerial, career, and life. And a lot of times I'll coach people in coming out. And many times it's for free. Are there any other questions? Those kids are ready to knock that door down. Yeah.
Would you mind my asking you do a Sister Dottie impression for us?
Oh, sure. You got to do the whole imagination. I don't know what you're talking about. We was up to the Kmart's and we seen you and we know what you done.